Okay. Session 5. So we only have one left. Next week is our final week, and I'm a little bit torn as to what we're actually going to do in session 6. I think I'm going to change what I thought we were going to do. Originally in the outline, I think I had challenging texts or something, but I don't think we're going to do that because the tools we've learned apply to easy and challenging texts. And it's just practice after that. So I think what we'll do in session 6 is probably something I should have done in session 1, which is just to consider and go through the grand story, narrative, biblical salvation. And so we can, as we consider different parts of the Bible, we know where we fall in the arc of what God has done in history to bring about salvation of the world. So I think that's what we'll do in session 6, but we're going to pretend that it happened in session 2 because that's when it actually makes sense, and it's something I missed. So we'll come back to that next time. But today we're going to go through some really, really practical things about how to make Bible reading and good Bible reading part of our lives. How do we actually make it a regular practice? And so this one, as we work through, is a list of things that I've thought of, but all of us, or at least some of us, have been reading the Bible intentionally for some period of time, and there's things that you've learned that will be helpful. So this will very much be a conversational time together, as I want to hear what things have been helpful for you that we can share that with other people and all grow in our Bible reading. Before we dive in, let's pray and just ask the Lord to be with us and to speak through his word and to call us into closer communion with him as we study. Lord, we thank you that you have called us to know you, that you haven't set yourself up as some distant God whom we can know nothing about, who we just assume things about from the weather and the sun and the moon and earthquakes, but one who has spoken to us, and you have called us to know you, and not just know about you, but know you and have real relationship with you, our Creator, and salvation through your Son. We praise you that is the kind of God that you are relational by nature, because you have made us, you desire to know us. And we pray that our efforts today would go a long way to encouraging us to know you more through the study of your word. I pray in your name. Amen. All right. Ultra practical. So as we're talking, be thinking of things that have been helpful for you in your own Bible reading, and we'll talk about those as we go, and then I'll be able to add them into the notes for next time we do this, or for the ones that get uploaded online, as we grow some practical suggestions here. But the first thing we need to recognize is that all of these tools for Bible reading, ways of reading the Bible, are only useful and fruitful if we actually use them, right? It's one thing to know how to lay bricks, or know how to do carpentry, or know how to paint. But if you never use any of those skills, they're not actually useful or fruitful. You've got them, but they're not doing anything. They're not accomplishing anything. They don't serve any purpose. And Bible reading as a habit, as a practice, as a skill, in that way is no different than any other. Of course, it is different in that it has miraculous power by the Spirit to change you, but it's still a habit and a practice and a skill we actually have to use. And so like any skill, we have to practice it to make it valuable, and we have to practice it for it to become natural, for it to become easy and regular and something we do without even thinking, to open a passage and study it wisely, reading to learn, reading theologically, and reading for change without having to look at our 8 steps to study the Bible. It just becomes intuitive. And we have all experienced that with different skills and things we have learned somewhere along the way, right? If you can drive, when you can drive your car, but if you get into another car that's different, like the gear shift is in the wrong place, or the wipers are on the left side, not the right side, it's just, I don't even know what to do. I get all confused because intuitively I'm so used to driving my car that when something is different, I get all messed up. But it's only because I've driven mine so much that it's now intuitive practice. And that can apply to anything, really: driving a car, putting your socks on, playing a sport. Like we do these things enough that we just get good at them and can do a lot of things even with our eyes closed because we're so used to it. And Bible reading, the only way that's going to happen with Bible reading is just through time and practice. It's only through immersion in this thing that it becomes natural and regular for us. Reading to learn, reading theologically, reading for change are only going to become second nature when we spend the time intentionally, regularly reading the Bible, when we make it a habit and a practice. And to that end, we're going to talk all about some of those things: habits, methods, practices, resources that can make Bible reading a regular and fruitful part of your life. And so we're going to run through a couple of categories. First is habits. Maybe there's only two categories. First are habits, practical things you can do. And second category is resources, things you can use that will be helpful in your study of the Bible. So first, let's talk about habits. And this is where it's going to be helpful to chime in and add to my list, because these are the 7 things I came up with, but we could probably list 100. So let's think through these. The very first and most crucial habit is to make the time for Bible reading. And I'm intentionally not saying find the time. I am saying make the time. We live in a world that is by default busy, that fills our calendars and schedules without even trying. And when our calendar and schedule is not full, our time gets filled with, cell phone and smartphone notifications and WhatsApp messages and TV and internet and scrolling. The world just fills our time. That's the default. And so if we want time in the scripture, we're not going to find it. It's not going to show up. We're not going to have time one day to do it. We need to make the time. And as a biblical command, Bible reading ought to be a priority. And if it's a priority, if anything is a priority, that's something we intentionally and sacrificially make time for because it's important, right? What we deem to be a priority, we make other sacrifices for because it's something that has to happen. And so if we're going to make Bible reading a priority, it has to be the same way, something we intentionally and sacrificially make time for because it's important. And so we ought to sacrificially make time for Bible reading. It's not something to fit in when we have time or to get to at some point, but we ought to build our schedule around. So the way this works is going to be very different in different seasons of life. But what I would encourage you to do is make a time that will work in your life and in your schedule. And it's going to be different for every person in every season of life. So right now, in my life, this only works if nobody else is awake. If my kids are awake, game over. And so this starts by saying, not I want to read the Bible in the morning and I'm going to get up when I want to get up and then read until the kids wake up. I have to build my schedule backwards and say, when do the kids wake up? And I need to back that up by a half an hour, right? I'm building my schedule in such a way that this is possible, right? If I just kind of wake up when I wake up and then say, I'll read the Bible if the kids are asleep still, it's never going to happen. When do they wake up? Back it up by 30 or 40 minutes. Now I've made the time. And whatever that looks like, if you've got no kids at home, or if you're, 14, 15, 16, this looks different, but it still has to be something intentional or it won't happen. If Bible reading is something we fit in or something we get to at some point, we're just never going to get to it. Build your schedule around it. 3 meals a day and reading your Bible, right? That's the kind of regularity we should aim for, so that it actually happens. Any other thoughts on making time? When works? What practical tools are helpful?
I cheat. I listen to it.
It's great.
On my phone.
Yeah.
I walk and talk.
Perfect.
It's not as effective as reading it, but I find I listen to it over and over again, so that I do get it.
It's really good. Yeah. Yeah, and you've done something helpful there. You've attached it to something else you always do, right? And I would, as a part of this, not just make a time, but also make a place where it happens. Like even having a chair and your Bible is there and you get your tea or your coffee and that's the spot and this is Bible reading time or this is Bible reading walk. Like just attaching it to a time and a place or another activity like morning coffee or a morning walk is a great way to make it happen because you're already doing that. Right. Post coffee. Second Second coffee reading. Second coffee. Yeah.
What's a good way to make it consistent? Like, let's say you did make the time, you did a point of schedule for
Yeah.
yourself. How do you bring yourself to it every time?
How do you make it happen?
Yes.
Just make it happen.
What if you're sick in the morning, for example?
Yeah, and it's not a legalistic rule. Like, it's not meant to, you have to tick this box every day for the rest of your life. It's setting a pattern. That's the default that happens. But if you're sick or you're away or something else happens, like my kids wake up early sometimes, and those mornings I don't get to the Word. And I, try to make the time elsewhere in the day, but it doesn't usually happen. I'm not in my Bible 7 out of 7. I am realistically in a week 5 out of 7. That's about normal for me in my life right now. So yeah, it's not about, this is a I must do legalistic like rule, check the box. But if we don't set the schedule, don't make the pattern, then we'll be 0 out of 7.
I would definitely think that the Bible is something that you should treat like food, like you said earlier.
Yeah.
So to miss a day on food would be kind of
not good.
Yeah, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Yeah, that's a great way to think about it. Yeah. Yes. Number 5. It's coming. No, you're good. You're on the same track I am. Number 5. That's good. Yeah, make a time, make a space, make it consistent. And so the default is that if you don't change anything, you don't even have to think about it, your day is just going to start this way or end this way or whatever it is your habit or practice is. The default is to get in the Word unless something particular happens that makes that not possible. Second practical habit is just, as you were saying earlier, how do you make it happen? Resolve to make it happen. Decide that you will do this. Decide that this is who you are. Commit to yourself, commit to the Lord to be consistent in His Word. And we're going to get to number 3, bring other people in on this. But number 2, just resolve to do it. Like we, it's a habit in our culture to make New Year's resolutions. You decide you're going to do something. You pick January 1 for some reason. And you maybe bring other people in for accountability. But you resolve, you decide in yourself to do something. And we ought to treat the Bible the same way. And as we were just saying, this is not about setting some legalistic expectation or a box ticking exercise just to be a better Christian because I read my Bible more. We want to do this consistently because we've recognized that it's important, it's valuable, and it's the primary means that God has given us to change and to know Him. And so this is something we should do, and making it a regular practice, resolving to do it, is something we should do. It should be a priority. Any thoughts on number 2 there? Resolving to read. How do we actually do that?
We need it to be faithful people. Right?
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure it is a command to obey His law and to know that there's
Yeah, absolutely.
So we do definitely need it.
Yes. Yep. Called to do it. Resolve to do it. Any other thoughts? Yeah, it is, absolutely. Yeah, that's right. Not just a command, but a gift. Yeah, absolutely right. All right, number 3, coming right out of that resolve to read. If you've ever made a resolution of some kind, like, I'm gonna get to the gym, or I'm gonna lose weight, or I'm gonna eat better. These are the classic resolutions we make. Those are far less effective if we don't tell anybody, right? Because if I make a resolution January 1 that I'm gonna go to the gym, and I don't tell anyone, and then January 2 I don't do it, no loss. I never told anybody. Nobody knows. It's just me. I'm disappointed, but that's fine. Those resolutions work in community, and that's why the gym thing exists, because you show up and you go there and you see people, and there's some kind of built-in accountability to whether you show up or not. It's why there's all of these internet-based and app-based diet and exercise and things that you can participate even in an online community for accountability and discussion. And Bible reading is something we can think about the same way. Reading in community will help us be more faithful and consistent readers of the Bible. So share your resolve to read, your resolution, with some people. Share them with people in the church, with your friends, with people you are in Christian community with. If that's family, if that's parents, if that's siblings, if that's spouse, whatever, and bring them into your resolution for not just accountability, although that's part of it. They can, as you read together, you can provide each other accountability, but also for community. Like, Bible reading is not something we're really meant to do entirely alone. I'm reading the Bible, and if I'm learning something and the Lord is teaching me something and it's changing my life, then I should want to share that with somebody else because it's incredible. And so reading in community is a great way to stay in the Bible and also for accountability. So add just your time in the Word and what you've learned to one of the things you talk about with other Christians. We come and we stand in the foyer and we talk about the weather and the coffee and the snacks we've got this week. But how often do we actually talk to somebody else about what, let alone what we just heard in the sermon, but like what we read in the Bible this week? Hey, I was in Daniel chapter 3, and this really struck me. What were you reading this week? Like, that's not a complicated conversation, but it means that we're doing Bible reading in community and we're holding one another to account for the basic things that God has called us to do. So just it's an easy thing to do. Make it a regular part of conversation with those you're in Christian community with. And if you want even closer accountability, find someone else who has also resolved to read the Bible and read the Bible with them and make an intentional and formal plan to keep one another accountable and talk about Bible reading. Say, hey, we've both resolved to read the Bible this year. We're going to read the whole thing in 12 months. Let's put in the calendar that we're going to, even just text. I do this with lots of people. We're just going to do a text check-in every Wednesday morning at 7. Hey, how's your reading been doing? What have you been learning this week? Great. Oh, I'm behind. Hey, here's some encouragement. Like just that little contact point, whether it's, depending on what your mode of preferred communication is, text, phone call, chat in the foyer, like just pick something with someone to create some intentional accountability. And if you really want to track with them, we're going to get to number 5 in a sec, read the Bible in the same way on the same plan. So if you really want to track with someone, say, we're going to read the whole Bible this year and we're going to read the RMM plan or something. And then even the 12 chapters you read this week are the same as the 12 chapters they read, and you can really have a conversation about it because you're in the same thing. So make the time for Bible reading, resolve to read the Bible, and then read in community for community and accountability. Any thoughts on that one? Yeah. Yeah, absolutely.
Somebody else is working against us.
Yeah, it's another great way, right? You're in the Word together, you're doing something together, you're reading with community and accountability. Yeah, absolutely.
I have to go to reading today.
Yeah.
I wanted to just give you my thoughts for a minute. First of all, the community part for me is good because I find that I don't learn unless I speak.
Mm-hmm.
The other thing I find is we're a lot littler or luxury. We have retirement.
Mm-hmm.
So what I do is, and mine is seasonal. I have a great time reading in the winter because I hate being outside.
Sure. Yeah.
Come the summer, I have so much responsibility and so many things this year I need to fix. I don't.
It's harder to make the time.
My plan, or
Mm-hmm.
the other thing is my plan is so long that I get tired of it.
Right.
When I start in the morning reading, it's like it's reading, and then there's devotionals, and I do it online Bible. I'll be 4 or 5 hours, and it's like, okay, I'm burnt out a bit. So I don't know. That's just my thoughts.
And to that one, make the time, resolve to read in community. It is important that we pick, and we'll get to this with the plans in a sec, but that we pick a plan or a mode or a purpose in reading and what we're going to read and what we're going to do that's actually possible in the life that we are living, right? Like, in retirement, you have different options and different amounts of time, but in I'll just pick on me again, full-time work, 2 kids, early start, like long days, and then doing things here, like the day is full, and so I can't do a 4-hour a day study plan because I would sleep 3 hours a night. It's just not possible. And so if I did pick that, I am failing every day, which is not helpful or true, because the measure is not what exactly we're doing, but consistency, faithfulness, and commiserate it with the time that we actually have. So in a season where you have 4 hours a day, set that goal. Do it because you've got the time. But in a season of life where you don't, and maybe that's now, have a different goal. Like if your goal is 4 hours, but it's not possible, you're not doing anybody any favors. You're just feeling like you're defeated. and you're never going to do it right, and you'll probably go, this is the way that I work, if I've set a goal that's unrealistic and I feel defeated, I'm not even going to do 15 minutes. I'm just not going to do it at all, because at the end of my 15 minutes, I still haven't done it, and I'm going to do 0, which is not a win either, right? So realistic goals for each season that you can actually attain, and then it's not about success or failure on the big thing that you wanted to do or could do in a different season, but something that's actually realistic right now.
I think one of the strongest points that you mentioned is actually thinking about it in discussion.
Mm-hmm.
That's actually going to keep you into it, especially if you have a plan to do it over, like you said, 12 months, the whole Bible.
Yeah.
You always have something to talk about with your friend.
Yeah.
There's always something there. There's the Bible. You just go on.
That's it.
I'm taking notes.
Oh, yeah. It's great. Go for it. Yeah, texting all your friends. Yeah, no, it's good.
The thing for me, I think my Bible would be like, I do the same things every single morning.
Yep.
I really like habits. So.
Yep. That's a good strength.
I do it with my mom every morning, so the accountability thing. Like, if she doesn't see me in the morning do it, she'll ask me before I go to school, like, did you do your Bible reading today?
Right.
Like, what did you do? So I have to do it basically. And then it's good for me because I have questions sometimes when I read the Bible.
Yeah.
And if I don't like have someone else there, I don't usually ask them, and I just don't really think about it.
Yeah.
That's exactly what I'm talking about.
Yeah, that's good.
If I really think about it and then I ask someone, I'm actually diving into getting answers.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's a great practice. Whether there's actually someone there while you're reading to ask, or to make a habit of just writing it down somewhere. Make a note. All right, I don't really understand this. I don't think I'm going to figure it out, but I am going to write it down. And then when I talk to someone, here's my little list. These are the things I'm thinking about this week. What is going on? And that's a great thing to do. And that's what other believers here in the church are for. It's what pastors and elders are here for. It's literally our job description is to do and help with those things. All right, number 4. When we have made a time, resolved to read, and we're determined to read in community, step 4, block out distractions. You've got your time, you've got your place, you've got your whatever your time is, 15 minutes to 4 hours, depending on what your reading plan is. Decide to read intentionally and block out distractions for the length of that time. Reading intentionally and fruitfully requires real focus and elimination of distraction, and especially in a world of constant interruption. Cell phone and smartwatch is the new culprit because it's on your body and it buzzes and stuff. Take that off, shut it down, turn off the cell phone, focus for a short period of time. Intentionally and fully disconnecting for a few minutes makes our time in the Word much more focused and fruitful. And if you set those things aside, what you will be able to do in 15 minutes is what you would have been able to do in an hour with your phone going off all the time. Like, set it aside, dedicate the time, be focused in it. And that applies to lots of things. I would apply that to almost anything that's focused work or conversation or thinking. But with Bible reading, it's particularly important. We just need that focused time. Set the distractions aside. And so that's another reason why I try to do my reading before anybody else is awake, because 4-year-olds are wildly distracting and they're noisy. And so to have them asleep makes Bible reading possible. Number 5, as Gavin said earlier, have a plan. If our plan for reading the Bible every day is to sit down and then decide what we're going to read, if you've only got 15 minutes, you're going to spend 10 minutes deciding what to read and then 5 minutes blowing through it, and it's just too fast and it's not focused. Having a plan, and I would argue it almost doesn't matter what it is, will make your time much more fruitful. If you've decided ahead of time, you open the calendar, you see what you need to read, you sit down and read it, you don't have to spend 10 minutes figuring it out or choosing what book is next. You just do the next thing, and you'll be able to use all of the time you've allocated actually reading the Bible. And we'll talk about some plan options later, but just pick one. Pick a plan, and if you can find somebody else who wants to do the same one, that's a helpful thing for reading in community. What have I got for time? Not lots. All right, reflect. Number 6, to remember what you've read. Reflect, remember. One common experience in Bible reading is that you get up in the morning, you read 3 chapters, you close the Bible, you get up, and you have no recollection whatsoever what you just read. None. And what's actually happening there is we've read and we've got it in the short-term memory, but we haven't done anything to move it from short-term memory to long-term memory at all. And even in our short-term memory, if someone actually, say you read, I don't know, some 3 chapters in Genesis or something, and you get up and you forgot what you read. If someone gave you like a 1-sentence summary or a trigger, you would remember most of what you read probably, but you just don't have a hook. There's nothing to bring you back there. If you read 3 chapters of Genesis, like, I don't know what I read, and then somebody said, oh, you were reading the account of birth of Isaac and the promise of God, and you say, oh yeah, and then you'd all of a sudden, with that little hook, be able to probably hang the rest of the story and construct the rest of what you read from that one reminder. So build yourself a reminder. Pick one thing, a small reminder, choose something from your reading just to intentionally reflect on through your day, and that's going to move that short-term memory into long-term memory as you rehearse and recall and reflect on what it is that you've read. And that little hook that you decided to memorize is going to bring you back.
Yeah, so the Bible reading I do is the Bible recap.
Yeah.
So it tells you where to read. So like today I read, it was like a recount of the battles that David won.
Yep.
And then after it, it kind of gives you that hook, like it recaps what happened in the chapters.
Yep.
And it's like really stuck with me. Like before, if someone asked me, like, what did I read? I'm like,
got nothing.
Where I read.
Yeah, that's right.
But with that hook, now I know.
Mm-hmm.
I'm like, oh yeah, that's what I read.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it makes a big difference. Another just practical thing in the hook and reflect category is it's in the education category mostly. People have proven that people retain and learn more effectively when they're writing things down. And so underlining, doodling, making notes, like just that physical connection to what your brain is doing helps us remember things. And that applies to Bible reading or learning in any context. But just writing things down as we go does that same thing. It hooks it, gives us some muscle memory attachment, and we remember things a lot better when we memorize, reflect on what it is we've learned. Last one in the habits category, and someone hinted at this already. We'll see when we get there. Is reading for breadth and for depth. And so we want to do 2 things in our Bible reading, 2 sort of modes of reading here. We want to broadly, so breadth, know the whole story of the Bible, and we also want to deeply know the individual parts. And so I'm going to have to label those light switches. So this kind of reading requires really 2 different types of reading. If you want to read for breadth, knowing the whole story of the Bible, and that's generally where you want to start. Reading for depth is hard if you don't have the whole picture in mind. Reading for breadth usually means reading the whole Bible in a year or less. Or if we're studying a particular book, reading for breadth means read that whole book, often in one sitting is what I would encourage. But reading for breadth is reading a lot in a short span of time, and most often it's not taking notes, it's not stopping to study, it's reading to cover the ground, to at least get the framework, the story, the outline in your head. One writer who was talking about reading the Bible, the analogy he used for this was raking leaves. So you go to your garden first thing in the spring, and it's a mess, and there's leaves, and there's sticks, and there's weeds and stuff. But the very first thing you need to do is, with a rake, a big tool, rake the whole garden fairly quick, and you get all the leaves out. You've done the whole thing. It's not finished. You haven't got down and done the work in the dirt yet, but you've raked the whole garden. Read for breadth. And you're like listening to the Bible is a great way to do that, because you're covering the whole Bible relatively quickly. The second way to read is to read for depth. And this is about not going fast over a lot of Bible, but going slow over a little bit of the Bible. And in that analogy of raking, reading for depth is like weeding. You get down on your knees in the dirt, in the garden with a shovel, and you're digging out one weed at a time. And it's slow. It takes a long time. Eventually, you get through the whole garden that you previously raked, but you know it much more intimately, every plant, every rock, every space, because you've been in there with your hands and a shovel. And we want to be doing both. We want to broadly know the whole story of the Bible and deeply know the individual parts. And really the second one, deeply knowing all the parts of the Bible, is very hard to do unless we broadly know the grand narrative of the Bible. So both of those habits are good and helpful as we read the Bible. Any thoughts on that one? Experiences with depth and breadth? Preferences? We usually all prefer one. Yep.
I sort of got into a habit that you created for me was Bible Project.
Oh, yeah. Hang on.
So I will do the Bible Project.
Are the lights being turned on and off down here? Okay. All right. I think I've solved our light switch problem. Bible Project. That's what I missed? That's what you said? Yeah.
Yeah, because what I'll do is from your teachings is I'll pick a book.
Yep.
And do the Bible Project with notes.
Yep.
And then read the Bible.
Yeah.
Read the chapter for the book. Then go back to the Bible chapter.
Yep.
Project.
Right.
Because I find, just for me, although your tools now act me to go slower and bring that in, and I find I miss a lot.
Yeah.
And the Bible Project just gives a nice overview.
Great overview. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, they do. If you haven't seen any of those, they do 5 to 20 minute, depending on the book, like video summaries of a book from beginning to end. Really, really helpful, particularly at the beginning when you say, hey, I want to study, the book of Exodus. Watch their 7-minute video. They give you an overview, a summary. Then read the whole book of Exodus. That's what I would recommend. And then, watching it again will help solidify the story, the frameworks, as you read, then as you study verse by verse where you are in that whole narrative. Yeah, really good tool. In the category of tools, we got 15 minutes for half our notes. It's going to be interesting. Maybe these will be quick. Yeah, these will probably be quick. It's a list of things, not as much a commentary. Yeah.
I have a teaching or study guide.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I find that's really helpful because in the beginning of the chapter, it tells me
Yep.
where it is and
Gives you a summary.
time where it is, which is helpful to me.
Oh, yeah.
And then I can go ahead and read it and follow.
Yep. Yeah, really, really helpful tool. Absolutely. So that's what this next list is going to be all helpful tools. So first one we've already talked about is picking some kind of reading plan. Reading plans give you a set structure for reading the Bible, and they're all different types. Some of them will cover the whole Bible in a year or 2 years or half a year. You can pick all kinds of different ones. Some will require you to read, 7 days a week, 365 days a year. Some are written that you read the whole Bible in a year if you read 5 days a week, which a lot of people find more manageable. Even if it's more reading, it's less days. Some will cover the Bible, cover to cover, like just front to back. Others will be chronological, so you read it according to like historical occurrence. Others will alternate from New Testament to Old Testament. There's hundreds of different ones, and the key here is just to pick one that seems interesting to you, and not just pick one, but also give yourself grace when you inevitably fall behind your reading plan, and don't stop just because you've fallen behind. Stick to it anyway, even if you finish 3 months late. It doesn't matter. Just stick to a plan. Don't give up because you fell a week behind. And I would argue, don't try to catch up. I never try to catch up. It's just the mountain becomes too big. Just get it done when you get it done. Stick to it. So that's what I would say about those. They're really helpful because, again, you don't have to decide what you're going to read. Second, just practical note on reading the Bible and different resources is just to be aware of what different Bible translations are out there and how they work and how they were translated and into English for us. So different Bible translations come at the Bible, and the original languages mostly, with sort of different goals. Some of them are trying to give you a more word-for-word interpretation, and it's more formal sounding, and it's a little more clunky sounding when you read it, but they're aiming for word-for-word accuracy, like precision. Others are called the dynamic interpretation model, and they're translating what we'd call thought for thought. So rather than taking a word and finding its best equivalent, they'll take a phrase and create the best English equivalent for the phrase. And so there's with word for word, it's much closer to the same word order and things, but with thought for thought, sometimes the clauses switch around, the words move around because they're aiming for a different kind of equivalence. And both modes, both translation tools are useful. You just need to be aware of what kind you're reading. And on either end, the further you go, if you go way towards formal word for word, sort of anything left of NASB becomes just really hard to read in English because the languages are different and it becomes a really, really clunky translation. And it can actually make less sense to read it because the language is so stilted. And then with thought for thought, sort of anything to the right of NIV strays a little further and further from the original meaning of the text and goes a little too far in trying to make it dynamically equivalent. Anywhere in the middle, kind of NASB to NIV is a reasonable place to hang out. And I'd recommend any of those translations for your own reading and study. We preach ESV just to be consistent here, but that's not like the translation. It's just the one that we use. But anywhere from NASB to NIV is a reasonable Bible to use. And often, one of the first steps I'll do when I find a verse really hard to read or understand is I'll just pull up 3 other translations and say, if I've got ESV, what does NIV say here? What does CSB say here? What does NASB say here? And sometimes just reading 3 other translations will give you 2 or 3 different words that help you kind of fill in the blanks and make a passage make a little more sense. So that's translations.
Like,
Yep.
even if you don't understand it, you don't have to have like 3 different Bible translations. You can just search it up. Like, there's like the Bible app.
Oh yeah.
You can just like switch the translation.
Yep. Yeah, absolutely. So apps are really helpful. You can find all of these translations. They're freely published online because they want to make the Bible accessible to as many people as they can. So you can just find them on the internet, find them in apps. Yep. Yep, that's the one I use most often is Bible Gateway. And Bible Gateway, you can do side by side. You can do, show me this verse in every English translation, and it'll show you like 90 different versions of a verse, which is not that helpful, but kind of fun. Yeah, absolutely. Internet is a great resource for this. Next one in the similar category, and you said this already, is to have a study Bible. And a study Bible is just a really big Bible. I meant to bring mine, but I forgot. I brought some other stuff. Yeah. Okay. So a study Bible will typically have, does it have text on bottom, notes in the bottom? Yeah, so a study Bible will have text on the top, notes on the bottom, and at the beginning of every book, it'll usually have an extensive introduction. So it'll give you maps and summary and purpose of the book and who wrote it and history and why we think Paul wrote the epistle to whoever, how it connects to other books of the Bible, major theological themes. It's an incredibly helpful tool. If there's one thing you get, make it a study Bible. And they are clunky and heavy to bring places, but they're great for using like at home. They are heavy. But yeah, study Bible would be the one thing I would recommend really any believer to have because it's such an incredible resource. They're very accessible. They're not that expensive, and they're so very useful. All of these additional resources are sort of one step further in terms of complexity and usefulness. Like they're much more narrow in application, but for the right thing, they can be useful for the right person. So the next step after a study Bible is to go to a commentary. And a commentary is not like Bible on top with notes underneath. A Bible is a giant book providing commentary. A commentary is a giant book providing commentary on either, it can just be a single book of the Bible, it can be a category of the Bible, it can be the whole Old Testament, it can be the whole Bible, lots of different options. So like this one is an NIV commentary on the entire Bible. So this is every book, and it's kind of what, if you took everything from a study Bible and like doubled or tripled it in volume, that's what this would be. So this is the whole Bible. So again, one resource for the whole Bible. But is the other room unlocked? Let's see. Let me grab one more. Oh, never mind. You can also get books this big that are just about one book of the Bible. So you can buy a book this big that's all about, the Gospel of Matthew or something, and there'll be like hundreds of those published over the last century that are commentaries on just one book. And those can be all different types. Some of them will be really accessible commentaries, and they'll typically be shorter. And they're written for anyone in the church, any believer who wants a more in-depth study of the Bible. Some commentaries will actually be just a collection of sermons. Like somebody's preached through a book and then they made all their sermons into a book. Others will be pastoral, like they're designed for pastors to study to preach or to shepherd and help people. Others will be linguistic, so they'll be heavily focused on the actual interpretation and the language, which again, depending on what you're up to, is useful or not. So there's commentaries I would buy that I would not recommend for anybody else because they care about things like translation and language and historical connection and those kinds of things. But an all-in-one like that or an accessible commentary can be a useful resource. Another cool resource you can have is a dictionary. Do I have one here? So there's lots of different books. Yeah, I guess like this one. That will look good. This is called itself an encyclopedia of biblical difficulties, but you can get all different books that will say, it's a biblical dictionary of cultural terms, or a biblical dictionary of theological terms, or a biblical dictionary of names, or whatever, and it can give you really specific information in really narrow categories. Other ones that you can get that are useful is an atlas, and after the study Bible, this would be the next book I would recommend for anybody. And it doesn't have to be this one, but a Bible atlas. And what it gives you is everything an atlas does, which is maps, but it gives you maps particular to the Bible and biblical times. And so it will show you in maps, the conquest of Canaan by Joshua, or it will show you, the land of Israel, but not just because there's different kinds of maps, right? So it's not just going to show you borders and roads, but you can get a topographical map that will show you valleys and mountains and rivers. And so then all of a sudden you understand why David went from Jerusalem to, wherever by going this way, because he's following a valley or something. And so you can see what's happening in even the land. And you can see things like, the city of Jerusalem and the way the temple was laid out and all kinds of different images. What's this one? Yeah, so lots of different things. You can get to the New Testament and you can see where different people went and why the missionary journeys went where they did, where the different cities were. Really, really helpful resource to just have open next to you if you're doing some study of the Bible. So study Bible and then an atlas. Two other ones that I would recommend using an online version of are a concordance and an interlinear Bible. So a concordance is just an exhaustive reference of every English word in the Bible. So if you want to look up every time the word love shows up, you go to an exhaustive concordance and you go to the word love, and it will show you every verse that the word love is in. That's not a good one to choose because it's like thousands. But this is actually a book version. This is Strong's Exhaustive Concordance. It's based on the KJV. But this is the whole Bible. Every word. So if I went to, Israel. Okay, Israel has like 12 pages worth of references, and it lists every single occurrence of the word Israel in the whole Bible. Now, you can do it with a paper-based version, or you can do it online, and that's a lot more useful. So if you want to see, hey, I'm reading in Ephesians, and I read that word in Ephesians 3, that passage we read earlier. He says that you may have strength in your inner being. And I thought that was really interesting. I thought, where else in the world, in the Bible, does it talk about inner being? So I just went on to Bible Gateway. I typed in inner being, and it shows every passage where that gets said. Just a useful tool to help us see connections between passages and how words are used in particular places. The limitation of a concordance is that you are searching English words. And so they're not necessarily actually the same original language words, because it's the word we've used in translation. Because, and we'll finish with this, when you translate, let's use the word love as an example, or maybe we can go both ways. So if I have the English word love, that's what I'm looking at in my Bible, and I go to a concordance, and I go to all the places where the word love is said. In English, we have one word for that, but in Greek, they had four. They had four different words for love that, depending on the context, can mean but don't always mean different things. And so you get to Greek and you realize, oh, I've looked up the word love in my English Bible as though it means the same thing in every place. But in Greek, there's 4 different words. And we take all of these words, and now that one doesn't occur in the Bible, but in original Greek language there were 4. The Bible has 3 of them. But we take all 3 of those Greek words and we translate them all to mean love. So when we look up in our concordance the word love, we're getting all of those. And we're not realizing that they can actually be different words. And then the other way can also happen where we get words in Greek or Hebrew, such as this one, which is charis. It's the girl in the church named Charis. And that word is translated several different ways in English depending on the context. So it can mean grace or favor or blessing. And so if you look at the word favor, sometimes, often it's charis, but you're not actually catching all the places where that word shows up. So if you're doing really in-depth study, particularly for teaching or a Bible study or preaching or whatever, you want to go one step further and look at original languages using something called an interlinear Bible. And an interlinear Bible will give you the English verse and then all of the Greek words or Hebrew words underneath. And it'll show you what's been translated to what. And you can do a concordance of the original language, and you can click on charis, and it'll show you all the places where charis shows up. If you're doing any original language study, I would encourage you to do it with help. Translation is inherently really, really difficult. We're trying to bridge 2,000 years worth of history to languages that people don't speak anymore, and they don't speak them this way anymore, even if the language still exists. And there's a couple of traps we can fall into with original languages. The first trap is assuming that if I have the word love in English, that it always means all of these things all the time. Or same thing down here, if I come across this Greek word charis, and it can mean grace or favor or blessing, it's not correct to assume that this always means all of these things. It's not the way it works. Words have context, and hello, Samuel, and we do that in English as well, right? If we took a word, I'm not going to be able to come up with a good example. Nope, I don't have one. We have lots of words that have multiple meanings, and if they always meant all of the things they could mean all of the time, English would be absurd. It just wouldn't make sense. And so Greek doesn't work that way either. And the other thing with words is that they don't always mean the same one thing in all those places either. So even a word like agape love doesn't always mean it doesn't always mean that sacrificial love. Sometimes it just means love. It's not always a really narrow, specific meaning. Every time it's used, it's all based on context. So original language is helpful, but if you're doing any original language study, especially at first, you're not familiar with it, get some help to kind of point you down the right path, because it can get murky pretty quick. So there's all of my practical suggestions and suggestions for resources. Again, if you're seriously studying the Bible, I would start with a study Bible and an atlas. Those would be my 2 go-tos for sure. Anything after that is bonus. Let's stop there. It's 9:45, so we'll pray and then we'll get downstairs. Lord, I thank you that we could spend some time just thinking about how practically we can get into your word and what resources can help and what it looks like to make this a habit of life. And I pray that these things would characterize us and that we would teach other people and encourage other people to take your word seriously and devote their time to intentional study of the word, that we might know you more and become more and more like you. I pray these things in your name. Amen. Thanks, everybody. We just got to tidy up some tables as usual. If you're able to help with that.